Hi everyone, hope you're all having a good week and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be cracking straight on with where we left off last week, pretty much because I want to get my milling machine back up and running and see how smooth our new bearings are. So unfortunately in this small workshop I've got here, I've not got a press, so I had to go elsewhere to get this spindle back together. So it's a little bit forward from last week, in the sense that we've got the new bearings packed in there and this is all pretty much back together. So how I want to start the beginning of this video off, I need to set the preload still on these bearings. So I'm going to share that with you now, my method on how we're going to do that. And then once I'm happy all this spindle's in a good position to go back up in the mill, I'll be chucking it back up there and just sharing a few pointers when putting it back together. And towards the end of this video I'm going to be running the mill up and we'll see how smooth our new freshly packed bearings are. So stay tuned, hope you're going to enjoy this guys. And if you do enjoy it, please subscribe to the channel. Before I put this spindle back in my milling machine then, I need to set the preload and get rid of any end float that currently this spindle has. So how I've got this arranged and set up is I've got the actual spindle mounted in my vise so it can't move. And over here I've got a mag base with a DTI gauge on it set to 0 on the end of my spindle here. And what I'm noticing is when I pull back and forth on the spindle, I'm currently getting about 0.05 millimeters of travel. Because I've got that little bit of end float there, to me that says these bearings still aren't quite tight enough and don't have the right preload on them. So I think I need to tighten this up a little bit more and then just check to see we've got rid of that end float. So using a bit of an unorthodox method of a random flat bar and a bit of tube over a C-spanner, managed to get this lock nut all tightened now, and all that end float that we had there is all gone, and we've got a nice little bit of preload on the bearings, so it's not really free spinning but it's also not tight enough where it's binding the bearings up. So that now is pretty much ready to go back into the milling machine. All that I've got left to do now is just bend that tabbed washer up over the lock nut to stop all that coming loose, and then that's ready to install back on my milling machine, and soon we'll be at a point where we can test this out and see if that horrendous noise has gone. Before lowering the head down then to get the spindle back up inside, I'm just going to apply a really thin coating of EP2 grease just round my spindle, just to help it up inside that bore there. Right, there we have it then, that's all greased up. So the next thing to do now really is to start lowering the head and try guiding the spindle up in there without causing any damage. So let's see how this goes. Oh, there we go. Managed to get it up actually. Managed to wiggle it up. Oh, I managed to clamp that there. Oh, that's a bit of a different method. Alright, going to loosen this off again and see if we can wiggle it up any more. Right, well, that went together not too bad actually. Right, now I think it's in there. Next thing I think I'm going to do is just get this bolt in the side here. That will prevent it from falling out. So with that spindle all up in there, I can look through here and I can see that the rack on the back of the spindle is lined up ready for that gear to be put through. So that's brilliant. Right then, now we've got the spindle all back in, everything else is just sort of a reverse order to when you took it apart. So I think I'm going to blitz through that now, give you a little time lapse of that, and we're going to come back towards the end of the rebuild where I'm going to show you just quickly how to set the preload on the spring return for the quill handle. With everything reassembled then, this is where we can now set the preload on the spring that's going to return our spindle. So to do that, you want to have the spindle all the way in the upright position, and you want to grab hold of the spring housing and you want to turn it in an anti-clockwise position until you feel a sufficient amount of preload on it that you can then locate it in to one of the detents, and then test the spindle handle and just make sure there's a good return feeling there from the spring itself. Right then, the milling machine's all back together now, and I just want to run through a few little tests here. I'm going to operate the machine on all speeds and just see what sort of noise we've got now coming from the machine. Hopefully it's going to be silent as a lamb. And also another little test I want to do. I've got a 20mm carbide end mill in here that I know grounds super accurately, and I'm going to stick a DTI gauge in there and see if we've got any massive run out coming from the spindle. So let's jump through the speeds first of all. So that's high number 1. So it's really the highest speeds where I was getting the noise, high 1 and high 2. And I've got to admit, that sounds a lot better. Let's just try that on high 2 now. So before there was like a sort of chattering noise there. And now it sounds like that noise is all gone. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That noise is all gone by the sounds of it. I think with doing that, I don't really need to go down to the lower speeds, because if there's going to be an apparent noise there, it's going to be more apparent at the higher RPM, so the speeds 1 and 2. And yeah, I'm pretty happy. There's no noises there, so I'm just going to have to see how that gets on over the next few weeks and hope that noise doesn't come back. I believe with these tapered roller bearings there is a period of bedding in, so it might just mean that after a few weeks I might have to drop the spindle back out and just tighten that top nut up a little bit more, but we'll see how we get on with that. Right, the next test I'm going to do on the lower RPM, and I'm going to set a DTI gauge up so it's resting on the smooth part of our end mill, and we'll see what sort of run out we're getting when operating this mill. With our test indicator then positioned on the smooth shanked part of the end mill, and I've got it set to 0, we're going to see what the run out of this mill is after replacing the bearings. So just a little heads up, each little increment on my dial refers back to 0.01 millimeters, and each sort of segment, if you were, is 0.1 millimeters. So it'd be interesting to see what this test shows up. So looking carefully at that test indicator, it seems to be hovering between 2 little segments. So without getting a more accurate test indicator on there, I can't be 100% sure, but I'm going to say that's no more than 0.01 millimeters of run out on that end mill. which I'm going to say for what I'm doing, 0.01mm of runout is pretty much spot on, because we've still got possibly a little bit of runout in this collet holder, a little bit of runout possibly in the end mill itself, so 0.01mm of runout overall is pretty much spot on really. There we have it then guys, start to finish on the milling machine, how to replace a set of spindle bearings. So although I've done this on a Walco Major GH40, there's a lot of different variants of this milling machine around on the market, and I imagine the spindles in those are all going to be pretty much identical. So anyone thinking about doing this job, hopefully these two videos will really help you out and set you on your way to changing your spindle bearings. Right, so now my milling machine's all up together, what are we going to be doing next week? So I think I'm going to be jumping in next week with Let's Make a Tool. Got a list of a few tools that I want to get made, so I'm not going to give anything away until next week. So until then guys, stay tuned, go back and watch some previous videos, and I'll see you then. Have a good week guys.